Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. What do we got going on here? Uh, so this is Dominic Holden from Buzzfeed broke this. I seen some tweets earlier popping up about some weird Trump administration a group of agencies circulating memos talking about demonizing legalized weed. And I'm like, this isn't very cool because I thought Trump was on the states' rights side and all this. So, good job breaking this, Dominic. Nobody had any idea that this was going on in the background. But at the same time, I mean, I've seen a lot of these agencies kind of make remarks that make me think there is something like this being floated in the background, especially the DEA Los Angeles' Twitter account. Oh my God, it's like every tweet is anti-marijuana for a long time now. But I mean, they've been going crazy lately. So anyway, let's go ahead and check this story out. Inside the Trump administration's secret war on weed. The White House has secretly amassed a committee of federal agencies from across the government to combat public support for marijuana and cast state legalization measures in a negative light while attempting to portray the drug as a national threat, according to interviews with agency staff and documents obtained by Buzzfeed News. The Marijuana Policy Coordination Committee, as it's named in White House memos and emails, instructed 14 federal agencies and the Drug Enforcement Administration this month to submit, quote, data demonstrating the most significant negative trends about marijuana and the threats it poses to the country. In an ironic twist, the committee complained in one memo that the narrative around marijuana is unfairly biased in favor of the drug. But rather than seek objective information, the committee's records show it is asking officials only to portray marijuana in a negative light, regardless of what the data shows. Quote, the prevailing marijuana narrative in the U.S. is partial, one-sided, and inaccurate, says a summary of the July 27 meeting at the White House of the White House and 9 departments. In a follow-up memo which provided guidance for responses from federal agencies, White House officials told department officials, quote, departments should provide the most significant data demonstrating negative trends with a statement describing the implications of such trends. As several states have approved laws allowing adults to use and purchase cannabis, critics have contended lax attitudes will promote drug use, particularly among youth, and they have pressed for a federal crackdown. The White House at one point said more pot enforcement would be forthcoming, though President Donald Trump has never said he was on board with that agenda, and he announced in June that he really supports new bipartisan legislation in Congress that would let state marijuana legalization thrive. However, the committee's hardline agenda and deep bench suggest an extraordinarily far-reaching effort to reverse public attitudes and scrutinize those states. Its reports are to be used in a briefing for Trump on marijuana threats. Quote, staff believe that if the administration is to turn the tide on increasing marijuana use, there is an urgent need to message the facts about the negative impacts of marijuana use, production, and trafficking on national health, safety, and security, says the meeting summary. I'm not really trying to comment too much while I'm reading this article, but I am going to say so far that it's so disingenuous what they're talking about doing. And furthermore, what they're talking about right here is just it's completely ridiculous. I mean, again, as we're going to find out more and more as we go through this, this is some secret stuff that they don't want people knowing that they're doing. And it's a bunch of unelected bureaucracies that float around, they're like they orbit the White House. So when this article keeps saying the White House, the White House, the White House, remember that there's the Office of Drug Control Policy, There's other agencies that are directly like talking to the president on a regular basis, like the Department of Justice and the National Drug Control Policy. All these people, like they said, they're going to put this together and then present it to the president. I guess they're trying to change his mind on what he said he was, supporting with states' rights and whatnot. But for them to just use negatives and to not like include all the positive data that we're seeing coming out of this legalization that's happening, and there's a lot to be said on the positive side, and not a lot to be said on the negative side, to be honest. A lot of their propaganda that they've floated to try to prevent states from legalizing on ballot measures and other things that people got to vote for, when you've seen their commercials and stuff, it was all stuff that really didn't make much sense or people don't really believe. They try to put a lot of weight behind teen use increasing, and just marijuana use in general increasing, which study after study shows that's just not the case. Not more people using, but the same amount of people might use more because it's more available. They don't have to go to black market, places to get supply. So, again, the one here that kind of that triggered me the most right off the bat is that they're talking about these negative effects and turning the tide on increasing marijuana use. Because the increasing marijuana use is what scares all the industries that are fighting to keep it illegal, obviously. I guess, not only what they figure is, and I always tell you that recreational is not really a thing. It's medical marijuana. It's all medical use. So you're just medicating whether you call it recreational or not. And that's how they feel about it. Because Big Pharma knows that if you're smoking marijuana recreationally, you might not even take aspirins anymore or something. It's a pretty powerful medicinal product that could cause a lot of damage to many things in Big Pharma's control. Many things that they have 100% market share on. That's what they don't want to lose. So back to the article, and I think I'm just going to read right through it. The White House declined to discuss the committee's process, but indicated it was part of an effort to remain consistent with the president's agenda. Quote, what? Which part of president's agenda involved, not letting states' rights happen? And by the way, if you're going to lie to them and just tell them all the negative things, which, by the way, are probably going to all be lies too, if you're going to do that and not tell them any of the positive things, then that's bullshit too. So your statement here is ridiculous. The Trump administration's policy coordination process is an internal, deliberative process to craft the president's policies on a number of important issues facing the American people and ensure consistencies with the president's agenda. Lindsay Walters, Deputy White House Press Secretary, told BuzzFeed News. None of the documents indicate that officials are seeking data that show marijuana consumption or legalization laws, which have been approved in 8 states, serve any public benefit or do a better job of reducing drug abuse. Coordinated by White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, the committee met on July 27th with many of the largest agencies in the federal government, including the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, and State Department. An unclassified summary of the meeting obtained by BuzzFeed News says the memo is pre-decisional and requires a close hold. And it says that the notes were not to be distributed externally. The White House followed up the next week by sending agencies and other departments, including the Department of Defense, Education, Transportation, and Veterans Affairs, as well as the EPA, instructions to submit a 2-page bulleted fact sheet that identify marijuana threats and issues with the initiatives by August 10th. I can go through every one of those and tell you why legalizing marijuana would be better for anything that they have to worry about on their end. And this is the way it is with all this stuff, man. So, I don't know. This is really crazy, man. So, while spokespeople at the agencies declined to comment on the committee itself, Asked if the Education Department has submitted its response to the White House, Liz Hill, a spokesman for the agency, told Buzzfeed News this week, quote, "I'm told we did turn it in on time to the White House," which, remember, these had to be turned in by August 10th. A State Department spokesperson told BuzzFeed News, quote, "The State Department regularly coordinates with the ONDCP on a wide range of drug control issues. For specific questions about the Marijuana Policy Coordination Committee, we refer you to them. Neither the Office of National Drug Control Policy officials or White House press office responded to requests from BuzzFeed News to comment on the committee. Departments were told to, quote, identify marijuana threats, issues created by state marijuana initiatives, and consequences of use, production, and trafficking on national health, safety, and security." It's so absurd, guys. I mean, marijuana, legal or not, is going to be there in the same amount of prevalence. We've seen that. We know that. If you have it illegal, then you have all these people breaking laws just to do the market side of it, because supply and demand is the only rule that matters in business. That's it. Laws against something don't stop it from being, it only emboldens it. We've seen that. Your drug war has failed. Your drug war failed, so this is all like just ridiculously pointless. You trying to prop up a failed drug war with lies is just, that's absurd, Office of National Drug Control Policy. But what we know you're doing is you're fighting for your life, because you know that marijuana is your biggest excuse to have a drug war. Without it, your drug war looks pretty stupid, and it's not going to really be effective moving forward. And it's like everything that happens proves that your drug war is not working more and more, but you keep, pivoting towards the way of, the way that we've proven has failed. So when it comes to marijuana, you've had prohibition on marijuana for 80 years, and now it's legal for medical use in over half the states. 9 states plus DC have legalized marijuana for adult use. Most of those states have sales already legalized and happening. So I just don't really understand where you're going with that. And your drug war failed on all the other drugs too. Like heroin, well, now it's everywhere. It's more potent than ever before and cheaper. Now you have things like fentanyl. Would that even exist without the drug war? I don't know, because you guys Schedule 2'd it a long time ago. So I don't know. Overall, your drug war is a big failure, and now you're trying to prop it up with a bunch of lies. So good luck with this. I'm going to finish the article now, maybe. The agencies should also provide an example of, quote, a story relating to an incident or picture that illustrates one or more key areas of concern related to the use, production, and trafficking of marijuana, the White House guidance says. The agencies were asked to describe how the drug possesses threats to their department and consequences of marijuana on national health and security. All right, let's just throw a dart at the dartboard and hit one of these agencies. Oh, we landed on the EPA. So I've already read Reefer Madness from the EPA. Like, I did a video about it back in 2016, or maybe it was 2017. The EPA was going to roll out this propaganda that marijuana production is destroying the environment, and they showed some pictures of like these illegal grow operations in the mountains of California on federal land. And it's like, that's not legal marijuana. That's illegal cartel grows on federal property that's not even illegal now that marijuana is illegal. And in fact, if you look at marijuana legalization, there isn't a whole lot of outdoor growing going on. Especially in the side of some mountain on federal property, that's totally still not allowed. But when you're talking about, outdoor marijuana growing, it's highly monitored and regulated to the max, and there's no way that you're going to have environmental problems coming from it. But I guarantee you, if this comes to fruition, that's what they would push. And that's just the way these agencies are. Every one of them's got their own Reefer Madness little story that they can tell. Back to the article, quote, we are asking each agency to provide information on marijuana, White House ONDCP staffer Haley C. Cronklin, wrote in an email to department leaders on August 1st. She cited the guidance document saying, quote, "It will assist you in providing the appropriate information." Contacted by Buzzfeed News about the committee, Conklin told Buzzfeed News, quote, "Thank you very much for calling, but I cannot comment," then hung up the phone. A number of agencies also declined to comment, including the Departments of Labor, Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, and Transportation. So you know what this is, guys? This is basically some unelected officials that run very powerful bureaucracies within the auspices of the administrative branch of the government, which is the easiest branch to influence as a whole because generally speaking it's only one person, and they're having these secret meetings to tell all these different agencies to lie about marijuana legalization, to come up with creative hypothetical stories or whatever and have pictures and be creative, but don't tell anybody about anything good you might have found out along the way. And if you do hear about anything good, just ignore it. And they're doing it in secret without telling you about it. They're trying not to, but thanks to BuzzFeed and whoever wrote this, let me see, Dominic Holden, thanks to BuzzFeed and Dominic Holden, we know about this now. Back to the article. None of the 14 agencies BuzzFeed contacted for this story, the DEA or the White House, denied the Marijuana Committee's existence. John Hudak, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, blasted the committee's slanted approach to the facts and the alienating effort on behalf of the president. Quote, "This is a terrible political move by the administration," he told BuzzFeed, saying that the committee's agenda betrays Trump's pledges to protect states from federal intervention, a position with overwhelming public support. Can't argue with that. Hudak added it would be, quote, "policy malpractice to only collect one-sided data." Quote, "The coordination of propaganda around an issue that the president ostensibly supported is fairly unprecedented." Quote, "This is a president who is not serious about states' rights and regulatory reform in areas like drug policy and is not serious about telling the truth to the American people or members of Congress from his own party," Hudak said, pointing to Colorado Senator Cory Gardner, a Republican, who authored legislation that would protect states' rights on marijuana, has praised Trump on the issue. Gardner's office did not reply to a request to comment on the committee. Update on that. Actually, he did, and we'll be getting to that in a minute. Also, Colorado Rep. Jared Polis, a Democrat who is also running for governor this year, slammed the committee in a statement Wednesday. Quote, "President Trump is flailing on marijuana policy, sometimes saying the states should decide, while also allowing the Attorney General and other prohibition supporters in his purview to run amok. If the White House is actually spreading misinformation about marijuana to undercut states' rights, it's appalling, but not out of the ordinary for President Trump and his gang of prohibition supporters," Polis said. Although the White House said last year that it expected greater enforcement of marijuana in states where it's legal, Trump has since suggested he'd support Gardner's legislation to allow states to legalize marijuana untouched by the Justice Department. The move seemed to jab at Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who has relentlessly threatened a pot crackdown. As leader of the Justice Department, Sessions has recited 1980s-style rhetoric about saying no to marijuana. But Americans have diverged from the federal government's hardline stance on pot prohibition, with eight states having now legalized, which is actually 9. It's adult recreational use and authorizing systems to sell it. Well, that would be 8 because Vermont still hasn't done that. A Quinnipiac University poll in April found that 63% of Americans support legalization. And we've also learned this year that even Republican support for legalizing marijuana is over half the country. So I don't know what you guys are thinking. But anyway, and not only that, but I'm pretty sure that 50% of the nation or more knows that all this stuff that you guys are about to put together in your little packet to try to demonize legalized marijuana is all bullshit. We know it. Even Trump knows it. He's not completely stupid. I don't know how, much a squirrel knows about some trees, but I know Trump isn't stupid. You tell him the sky fell in Colorado, he's not going to buy it, guys. You know why? Because I'm pretty sure in saying that he watches news all the time, and he watches Fox News. And in case you haven't noticed, Fox News isn't exactly like the most weed-friendly news station. However, I will say that within the last 6 months or even 10 months, the reporting over at Fox News has definitely started to shift towards more education-based approach about cannabis. All the way to the point where some people that I would never watch for financial advice has had some people on there to talk about medical marijuana that were really touched people's hearts. So we don't want to get into all that, talk about different news stations and where Trump sits on this issue. But I will say this, Trump's not a complete idiot. And I totally, you can call me crazy if you want, but so far, just Trump saying that he would support Gardner's effort to give states' rights to the marijuana states, and that's the farthest that a president has ever went to help ending prohibition federally so far that I know of, and that's pretty unbelievable, to say the least. So I'll tell you, man, you just anyway, back to the article. While marijuana consumption rose in the 15 years before Colorado and Washington became the first states to start allowing adults to buy marijuana in 2013, according to the Journal of American Medical Association of Psychiatry, federal data indicate that marijuana abuse disorder has dropped nationally since then. And then there was an update today for this. Comments were added from the White House, which said it wouldn't discuss the deliberate process used to craft the president's agenda. Well, I mean, we can kind of figure it out. You guys heard the president say he would support Cory Gardner, so the Office of National Drug Control Policy decided to get together and, figure out what their next step was to try to talk Trump out of that. That's what this is. And furthermore, if you guys think that you can do all this in secret and have more power than elected officials, I don't think this is going to work for you. But anyway, we got some updates. Here's this update that he just said. The White House doesn't deny my story about Trump's secret new anti-marijuana committee. They won't discuss how they craft policies for what they call the president's agenda. Full statement below. But we see this, and that was Lindsay Walters, Deputy White House Press Secretary. And here is the statement from GOP Senator Cory Gardner and other statements that have surfaced since the story broke earlier today. And this is Tom Angel, of course. That's actually where I first seen this. I seen him tweeting about it, and I just want to keep sending people your way, Tom, because you do great work. But marijuanamoment.com, or .net, I should say. And if you want to support Tom Angel and his efforts, you can become a Patreon. They do great work over at Marijuana Moment, tracking hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation worldwide, really, and staying on top of everything that's happening. Congratulations for all your successes. I love that people are finally tuning into this stuff, because I keep saying how, weed news just isn't the most popular thing going, but lately I'm seeing people are paying attention to tweets, paying attention to videos, reading stories. So keep up the good work over at Marijuana Moment. And let's go ahead and read that. A Republican U.S. Senator who earlier this year cut a deal with President Trump to support legalized legislation ending federal cannabis prohibition is pushing back against news that the White House plans to highlight, quote, issues created by state marijuana initiatives. As Buzzfeed first on Wednesday, The Trump administration has formed an entity called the Marijuana Policy Coordination Committee, which is asking departments and agencies across the government to compile, quote, data demonstrating the most significant negative trends about marijuana and threats it possesses to the national health and security. Ridiculous. I mean, national security, come on. Is this, remember that after 9/11? After 9/11, we heard that, if you buy a dime bag of weed from that dealer on the corner, it really is just that money's going to support terrorism. There's so much shit wrong with that. But this is just absolute witch hunt style shit here. The development seems contrary to an agreement President Trump worked out with Senator Gardner, Republican from Colorado, earlier this year to support a far-reaching marijuana bill in exchange for the senator ending a blockade on Justice Department nominees he began in protest of U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions' decision earlier this year to rescind Obama-era guidance that generally protected state cannabis laws. And on that tip, the Garner-Warren States' Rights Act or whatever, the States Act, that thing was dead on arrival, man. If they can get that thing revamped and up and running again, that would be great. So let's try to focus on doing that, guys, instead of just using it as a grandstanding piece when we already know it's dead on arrival. But anyway, a member of Gardner's staff told Marijuana Moment that the news about the administration's anti-cannabis effort appears to be a case of federal employees undermining the Trump's position. And that his boss expects the president to keep his promise. Quote, there seems to be a lot of interest in these storylines going around about how staff are trying to manipulate the president or work around his firmly held policy positions, including the position he's held since the campaign that marijuana policy is best left to the states. Alex Siciliano, the senator's communication director, said in a statement. Quote, in April, President Trump's legislative affairs director said President Trump does respect Colorado's right to decide for themselves how to best approach this issue. The press secretary then publicly confirmed that the administration's position in a press briefing. Additionally, President Trump said publicly in June that he is likely to support Senator Gardner's States Act. Indeed, the president said that month that he, quote, really supports cannabis legislation filed by Gardner and Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts. Quote, I really do. I support Senator Gardner, he said when a reporter asked whether he backs the bill. Quote, I know exactly what he's doing. We're looking at it, but I probably will end up supporting that, yes. The White House Office of National Drug Control Policy is leading the administration-wide anti-marijuana push, according to Buzzfeed. Quote, staff believes the administration is to churn the tide on if he is to churn the tide on increasing marijuana use, and there is an urgent need to message the facts about the negative impacts of marijuana use, production, and trafficking on national health, safety, and security, reads the document obtained by the news outlet. Now, one would look at that and just flip it around on its head and say that you can't even, this is ridiculous, to say that you guys believe that if the administration is to turn the tide on increasing marijuana use, what is the motivation to do that? Do you have a reason why there should be any kind of a motivation to turn the tide on the increasing marijuana use, which is not a thing anyway, by the way? No, you don't. Because the second part, you need the second part to be already done and factual and not omitting things that marijuana legalization did positively. So you got it backwards, man. You don't start from a conclusion and make recommendations and then work your way to the actual findings of some kind of an investigation. That's totally not how you do it. That's how you started with a conclusion because it's you have a motivation factor. It's called corruption. You guys know that you all the money, you don't want this stuff that is already happening to stop, because that's what keeps the Office of National Drug Control Policy in existence. Such dishonest bullshit going on right here. And by the way, you guys are unelected officials that are just, trying your hardest to keep your jobs. And what you're doing is exerting an unreasonable amount of power and influence over a branch of government that is only run by one person, essentially. Like, you don't see them going before Congress with these findings because they would get laughed out of the fucking halls of Congress. You don't see them trying that shit now, do you? But when you think that you can influence one person, then that's what you do, because that person has just as much power as the whole Congress. So, all right, whatever. Anyway, back to the article. But the move also seems contrary to statements Trump made on the 2016 campaign trail about respecting cannabis laws in the growing number of states. Quote, 47 states have now acted in a way that is contrary to the Controlled Substance Act, and there are more initiatives on the ballot this year, Siciliano of Gardner's staff said. Quote, whether their decision, these states ought to be respected. Whatever their decision, I should say. Regardless of the accuracy of the story, Senator Gardner remains confident in the commitment the president made to him to support states' rights' solution to the current disconnect on marijuana law. I don't think there's any problem with the accuracy of this story. Like, I think this really is a thing, because nobody denied it when Buzzfeed asked them if this committee actually existed. Siciliano did not respond to a question about whether his boss plans to reach out to the president about Wednesday's news. Meanwhile, legalization advocates slammed the White House's effort to coordinate an anti-marijuana strategy. Quote, these are the death rattles of marijuana prohibition, Normal Political Director Justin Streckles said. Those who seek to maintain the oppressive policies of cannabis criminalization are grasping at straws in their effort to undo the public policy progresses that have now been enacted in a majority of states and that are widely supported by voters of both major political parties. We can't stress that enough. And thank you, Justin, for pointing that out. Thank you, Cory Gardner's people. Thanks, Tom Angel. Thanks, Dominic Holden over at Buzzfeed. Thank everybody for getting this out, because it's important that people know what's going on behind the scenes. Even if this is premature that we find out about things like this, I'm glad, because I think that when the Office of National Drug Control Policy is doing something, there should be 100% transparency as to what they're up to. And that goes for the FDA, and that goes for the DEA, and all these alphabet agencies that control the government. They have more power than elected officials nowadays. They have more power than judges. They have more power than actual standing laws. And it's absurd. And in this case, they're trying to use that power and influence to persuade President Trump to do something that's against his policy position. This should not be tolerated, guys. I don't know what we can do to push back against it, but the fact that we can inform people about what's going on is a big step towards calling them out when anything does happen further. So thanks for tuning in. And again, thank everybody that brought this to light. Keep up the good work and keep up the fight out there. This is far from over. We got to baby step our way through legalization, and then eventually we can get to that part where we end prohibition and get to the tomatoes. All right, have a nice one and subscribe.